Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my work. It is an honor and I am excited to share it with you. Today, we will be talking about the valorization of waste medical masks. So, as a result of the pandemic, about 3 million masks are used every single minute. And most of these are disposable masks. So the problem comes into play in developing countries where solid waste disposal systems are not equally as effective throughout the entire country. And so masks end up in public areas like streets and beaches as opposed to the landfills that they belong in. For example, there are a few uninhabited islands near Hong Kong. And even on these islands where nobody stays, for every 100 meters of beachfront, scientists were able to find 10 masks. And that is terrible for the planet. So let's have a look at the impact of unsustainable mask disposal. So from the left-hand side, we can see that it impacts our values. This is because studies show that we are more likely to litter in areas that already contain litter. Secondly, it affects our children. That's because we are indirectly teaching them that irresponsible dumping is acceptable. And thirdly, it affects our values because landfill sites are usually located in lower income areas. And so the lower income areas are usually the places that are more likely to be littered with waste masks. And this creates the impression in society that poorer people are less important and their property is less important. And so you have this building divide between the rich and the poor, which creates resentment in society, which is not good for anyone. Secondly, waste masks impact our physical health. So, because the coronavirus can live on inanimate objects for up to 9 days, you have a real possibility of secondhand virus transmission. And like I said previously, because waste masks are usually dumped in landfills, which are located in low-income communities, you have the low-income communities that are likely to suffer from secondhand virus transmission. And because they are less likely to afford medical attention, then they are more likely to succumb to the virus. And this means that parents cannot pay for their children's school fees, their children cannot go to school, and the cycle of poverty continues. Finally, unsustainable mask disposal impacts our mental health. You see, if you have more masks, then more landfills are required. And if more landfills are required, studies show that children who grow up around these increased number of landfills are more likely to exhibit behavioral problems, emotional problems, and achieve poorer test scores. But that's not everything. Unsustainable mask disposal impacts the economy. You see, litter ruins the aesthetics of an area, which causes property prices to decrease. And if you have more landfills or more masks, then you need more landfills. And if there are more landfills, then more property prices decrease. And as you know, when property prices decrease, it's very likely that we end up in an economic recession. Finally, there is the impact on the environment. Animals sometimes mistake these masks for food, and so they ingest them and they choke or suffocate. The animals that do not choke on the masks actually have the plastic filling in their stomach, and it creates the feeling that they are full, and so they actually stop eating and they starve to death, which again is a real tragedy. So let's talk about some of the solutions that were proposed to waste masks. Firstly, people propose that we use biodegradable polymers to make our masks. Now, the problem with this is that biodegradable polymers are usually far more expensive than their counterparts, and that was shown by Sjogren. And it also doesn't eliminate the existing waste masks that plague our society. On the right-hand side, we have another alternative. So people proposed that we use the polypropylene in the masks as a concrete additive, and this leads to stronger concrete. The problem with this is you don't want your workers to get sick, so you need to disinfect the masks beforehand, which can be expensive. And secondly, you are only using the polypropylene in the mask, and separating the polypropylene from the rest of the mask can be an expensive process. But there is one saving grace, and we call that pyrolysis. So as you can see here, we have waste masks, which then enter a crusher, which then enters the pyrolysis reactor, and out we get bio oil and biochar. So The thing with this is that it's a simple process. You don't need to separate the polypropylene from the masks. That is advantageous. Secondly, it is safe. Because a pyrolysis reactor operates at such high temperatures, you don't have secondhand virus transmission, and you don't need to disinfect the masks beforehand, so you save a lot of money. Thirdly, it is an established process. Pyrolysis, because it is so established, offers less risk and higher capital and lower capital costs, of course. And finally, you have valuable byproducts or products that are produced. You have bio-oil and biochar. So studies show that if you produce bio-oil from polypropylene and HDPE, then these products will yield diesel-grade fuel. And if you have a high-quality product that you can produce at a low cost, you have something that is very advantageous. So let's evaluate pyrolysis in terms of people, the profits, and planet. Starting with people, of course, it is going to give you job creation, which is excellent in South Africa. Because you need to hire plant personnel, you will create jobs, and you will also produce cheaper fuel so that more people can get to work and more people can have a higher standard of living. Secondly, there is less secondhand transmission because you are destroying waste masks. And thirdly, you have improved mental health because there are fewer landfills and so fewer children are affected. And of course, back to the secondhand virus transmission, if your morbidity rate goes down, then you have increased life expectancy and everyone is quite happy. Next, we are talking about profits. You see, if you can produce cheaper fuel, then more money can be spent in other sectors and you have economic growth. Next, Fahim and Mohsen in 2021 estimated the expenses of setting up a pyrolysis plant in Egypt. And even that investigation showed that investing 2 million rand can yield billions in profit along the line because you are producing high-grade fuel. Next, there is the impact of pyrolysis on the planet. So this is a double-edged sword. You have less plastic ingestion by animals because there are fewer masks in the environment, which is very favorable. But the downside is you are producing fuel. And if you are producing fuel, then somebody must be combusting the fuel. And when you combust the fuel, CO2 emissions increase. So to minimize this impact, the solution would be to use the bio-oil that you produce from the reactor to power the reactor. And the biochar that is produced can actually be used to capture the emissions from the reactor. So of course, carbon capturing is a very new field and more development needs to occur there, but it is at least something to minimize the impact of pyrolysis. And that's about everything. So let's try to have a conclusion and evaluate pyrolysis overall. Pyrolysis is beneficial to people, profits, and the planet. However, it is only a short-term solution to the existing face mask problem. It should never be taken as an excuse to continue to irresponsibly dispose of masks. The best long-term strategy would be to develop an affordable, biodegradable set of masks that allow for mainstream adoption. And the reason this is necessary is because masks are going to be around for many years to come, and we need to have a long-term strategy that is also sustainable. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Please enjoy the rest of your day.